CI live at 4 o'clock here on Tuesday. And today we have a very secretive topic that we will be discussing. We will actually be talking about confidentiality and coaching, kind of exploring when to establish it, malpractices of confidentiality, when you could potentially break confidentiality, if that's ever a thing, if that's a possibility. Hopefully we have time to discuss that. And I think a really good way to begin this live stream would be asking you guys about the importance of confidentiality in a coaching session. And must it happen? We probably should get that out the way too. Should it be something that is occurring? Maybe this is just a silly question to ask, but I want to ask.
Let's define confidentiality. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay,
there you go. Going to talk it all, Brooke.
So, okay, there we go. That's a good place to start. You're right, Brooke. What is confidentiality? What does that mean in general? And then we can, I guess, flex into the coaching space, what that means in a coaching space.
Yeah, Brooke, continue. What is confidentiality?
I muted myself.
So confidentiality has the word confidence in it. And confidence is sort of like another word for trust. Usually when someone has self-confidence, they've got trust in themselves. When you have confidence in others, they have your trust and you trust them to do something. So when we talk about confidentiality, usually in the non-legal sense and just the the run-of-the-mill sense, we're talking about keeping secrets and not saying any more than you have to, and being trustworthy with a person's personal information. All that comes with confidentiality. So you're not, if somebody tells you something in confidence, that means there's an understanding that you're not going to go blab and tell everyone. But gossip is fun, so we tell people sometimes. I can't keep any sort of confidentiality, so don't tell me anything.
You are the contrarian.
Yes. I'm going to plug my mic in really quickly, guys.
So the confidentiality is definitely an important aspect of our coaching. While we don't have, the law that says we're under HIPAA and we're under these confidentiality guidelines, it's still a really important aspect of our coaching session to not go and talk about clients, to not go and share about their names and details about them. One of the things I was reading earlier, what if you work for a corporation and the coachee you're working with at that time works for that corporation? Where does that confidentiality end and begin? What do you think, Jerome?
You read my mind. I had that prepared for us to discuss. Confidentiality, and say you are hired on like in a corporate space as a coach. Do you report back to the employer, or is that still that's a conversation that's kept between you and the client that your employer did hire you on to coach? I think that's very interesting because, as an employer, you probably maybe want to know, about the potential success of these sessions. And how do you gauge that without actually explaining what's going on in those sessions? I think you keep that completely confidential even if you are in a corporate space, as a coach and client, that should still be a confidential conversation session. I think an employer, sorry, Britt, go ahead. You're teetering,
well, we can't actually guarantee confidentiality. We cannot full disclosure and agree confidentiality, like to total confidentiality. And there's a number of things and reasons that we cannot as coaches. And one of them is that rule of referring out, of reporting, that moment. And so at that point, confidentiality will have to be broken, right? So we cannot ever 100% guarantee confidentiality at any point. Now, there are ways to safeguard, et cetera, but also if it's in a corporate space, you don't talk about my business to anybody except me. If I'm like you talk to me, owner, like no.
Well, if you're employed by a corporation, you follow whatever confidentiality rules the corporation that your employer sets for you. So, as far as being a coach, an ICF coach, there's no laws, but they're not going to. The ICF and I guess other coaches in general will not take kindly if you break confidentiality, and there's that sort of conflict between what your employer wants from you and what the ICF dictates as good ethics.
So there's two parts to that contract that we're talking about, that confidentiality contract. One, the employer sets the stage of what they want to happen. Two, that employee is aware of what the employer is looking towards and what that communication is to entail between either the coachee, coach, or the sponsor, which is the corporate office. So that gets determined between all of us, essentially. And then the other confidentiality pieces between me and my coachee really need to stay confidential, except for those pieces as determined by the group to release that information, which is a lot to say. Be careful.
And also, when we're talking about confidentiality, everybody should know, either if you're working for a corporation or if you're not working for one and you're employing yourself, whoever you're employed with, yourself and the person you're coaching, all need to be aware of what the confidentiality agreement is and what info is and is not kept confidential.
Take it a step further. I think that we as people really have no clue how not confidential things really are in our lives. Like, there's a reason there's a cookie policy and a privacy policy that everybody agrees to now. That is all based around privacy and privacy protection on the internet. And the expectation of privacy, I think, as far as people go, is I think we are getting a degree of privacy that is much higher than the true to God level of privacy we are in fact getting. They say that 75% of everything you do on the internet is tracked. It's probably a higher number by now.
Yeah, I would agree.
By folks like myself. And I only say that because mostly it's tracked for marketing. It's not like tracked for the big scary reasons everybody thinks, but it's mostly.
I think marketing is a big scary reason.
Well, yeah.
And I happen to be a marketer as well.
We don't want your social, is what we're saying here. We're not looking for that.
Your social media, not social security.
So let's challenge what we were saying about that corporate and then confidentiality. What if you're a mom hiring a coach for your teenage kid?
Oh, well, that teenage kid confidentiality is out, man. You're a teenager. You have no rights. I think in that case, it would be up to you have to, to some degree, to garner that level of, create that safe space for the teenager, say. I mean, what are the lines, though? And that all has to be discussed prior to, I would imagine.
Yeah, setting that agreement also is discussed before. And usually, when you're talking with the parent, now this is not in granted, you find out what working with young people, there's certain criteria you do have to meet, like go getting fingerprinted and all that good stuff. But on the flip side, agreement can look like, you, mom, understand that anywhere, if anyhow, that I'm supposed to get into anything with your teen here, there's got to be some confidentiality going on, or we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And then as a group, we're discussing, if there's anything, harm to self, harm to others, or anything that feels like an emergency. But what's an emergency, right? It feels like an emergency. The teen and I will come to you and share with you that information. That's typically what a lot of people do in that situation.
I will. What was interesting for me, I had a mentee that worked with me for a while, and he started working for me when he was 17. And he just wanted to learn from me, and I was like, you can't even come near. We can not work nothing until I have a total I need your parents to sign something. I need and I was surprised though. His parents were they were just told, he can do whatever, and I thought that they would be a little more concerned. But especially for somebody who's I'm a woman and it's a boy. Like, it's going to be very awkward space to be in. But I made sure everything, liability, like I was like indemnification, just everything you can imagine. What's interesting though, if we're talking, and then this is just throwing it out there, like on an NDA standpoint in that regard, if you couldn't hold, you can't hold the underage minor to a contract, right? So that's why the contract has to be with the adult parent.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting situation to be in. I'd have to peruse the contract because there's a lot of agreements that go on between coach and client when that coach-client agreement is signed. And it's not, in fact, that the teenager is not really opting into any of it at the end of the day, or not legally legal standpoint. So, again, not coached at teenagers, so I would have to learn more in that space.
The bottom line, confidentiality is still the direction we're working in, even with parents and children corporation, because if we're able to get any work done, there has to be some sort of line that doesn't get crossed, so the coachee can feel safe and disclosure of what they need to in that present position.
So we've been talking about all these spaces about when to keep confidentiality, but when do we as coaches break it?
Yeah, harm to self, harm to others.
There's tons of times. I can think of like 4 or 5.
Refer out.
Also, when we get testimonials, when we have to submit a session to ICF, right? We have to. There's a release of information that gets signed when doing that, but still, that is a technical break of confidentiality. If you were to talk about a client in your marketing, and maybe you're not giving specifics, but I see coaches do it all the time. I had a client win, and so is that a break? You're breaking, in essence, you're breaking confidentiality, even though you're not giving specifics, correct?
Not technically, because there's sort of the understanding that you can talk about a client as long as you don't give away names at all. Like if you're talking about like a client with another coach, like a colleague or something like that, and you're not giving away specifics, there's an understanding that that's okay because you're talking about it from a professional standpoint. And even like in HIPAA, let's just say, or in like the medical industry, you can talk about cases, but if you give away specifics for who this person is or any sort of identification, that's where you get in serious trouble.
But who knows where that line is, though? Too, at the end of the day, like what somebody can. But so we know, in the confidentiality agreement or the coach-client agreement given by ICF, it says this coaching relationship, as well as all information documented and verbal that the client shares with the coach as part of the relationship, is bound by the principles of confidentiality set forth in the ICF Code of Ethics. So that makes me go, shoot, I need to go get familiar with some codes of ethics now. I do know it's statement 3. That much I do know. So what does the ICF Code of Ethics say exactly, I wonder? Their definition, just is protection of any information obtained around the coaching engagement unless consent to release is given. So any information whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with that definition in mind, I think truly the only time it would be ethically okay to break confidentiality would be, again, if to cause harm to self or others. When that occurs, that's an instance where you're not discussing with your client that I'm going to share this information. That's just kind of something that should be shared outside of that session, just for everyone's health.
Reading number 3, it says maintain the strictest levels of confidentiality with all parties as agreed upon. I am aware and agree to comply with all applicable laws that pertain to personal data and communications. So that's also that protection of their, when they pay you, when you invoice, when all of that, there's all these nuanced things that come into owning a business and actually accepting money from somebody. And credit card information too, and I think that's what that end bit there comes from. One of the questions we get in class a lot is, how long do I hold on to information for, like whatever you have? And there's really no law that requires us to, right?
There's no government, or ICF doesn't say you have to hold on to your notes if you have notes for any length of time. They do say if you're going to have them, it's under lock and key or code protected, or as best as possible, that privacy. I take notes, just particularly jot down some concepts, and then I shred it and throw it away. So I don't keep them. It's just usually for that session if I need to remember something. I also provide a notebook for the clients. Should they want to take notes, they have the opportunity to do so if they want.
So I'm reading an interesting, it says coaching is a confidential process. The notes taken during the coaching sessions are confidential. Sometimes people forget to think about what it means and how to protect confidentiality. For example, if a coach takes notes on a company-owned computer, then the notes are not confidential. If the notes are sent via company email address, then the notes are not confidential. Bottom line, company computers and emails with all they contain and are owned by the company, including everything contained within it. So it's interesting, something that people may not think about, right, in that space, is if you're in that corporate space and you're sending emails to anybody back and forth, or even to one of your clients, let's say you are a corporate coach and you're emailing and you have that company email, not a confidential email at that point. And
well,
it's
not confidential in the sense that the corporation can look at it whatever they want. It's confidential probably in the sense you can't show people outside of the corporation. They most definitely have confidential agreements about that, about showing internal emails and stuff like that.
So what happens if there are no notes from the coaching session? So note taking is a big thing. Like that.
Hopefully you have a good memory.
Yeah. Well, those notes can be, that is right there. You've got to protect those, as Lisa said, under lock and key, and that includes the handwritten ones as well, right? What happens, Lisa, in the case of if I am in a couple, right? I'm married, let's say, to somebody, and we were coaching, but now we've been you were a coach for a few years, but we're getting a divorce now. And something happened within the marriage, whatever, and the angry, we'll say, husband goes, the coach he was there. The coach can attest to what happened. Subpoena the coach and get the coach in here to share, right? And what do you do as a coach at that point?
You have to go. You don't have any option. You check with a lawyer on what you can and can't say. You have a lawyer. And go with the lawyer and their recommendations. I mean, that's what you've got to do, but you've got to follow the law. You can't ignore the law. If you're subpoenaed, you go in.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, regardless. Let's say you're not subpoenaed, but you've got, let's say husband and wife still married. Husband calls and says, I'm worried about my wife. What has she been talking to you about in the session?
If I'm only seeing the wife, I don't acknowledge that I've seen her or not seen her. If it's just her I'm seeing. If it's the couple and the couple are coming in individually, then I will. So it's basically, sometimes I'll see a couple and it's still part of the coupleness, which is meaning there's no secrets like that, and that's what I say. But I'm also not going to talk to the husband without the wife being present. So what I will do is say, let's have a session, let's have a conversation, and let's understand what you're asking here so we can have a full conversation around that.
I think this also needs to be said. If you're ever subpoenaed and you have notes or documentation or something on a computer, confidentiality also doesn't include illegal activity. So whatever you do not burn your notes, do not delete information, do not destroy evidence. You are going to dig yourself a very nasty grave if you do that and you're found out. So don't do that.
Lisa, one of the things Lisa had mentioned before, though, in this space, is that she did not take extensive notes.
Yeah.
So that she could, if ever put in that situation, genuinely, not have a clue, right? Genuinely be able to do plausible deniability, right? At that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
The notes make it very concrete. once they're down. This is also a situation we get as a school. So as a school, we will, on occasion, not often, and it's happened recently, have somebody call in. I had a woman call in, and she said, I want to check and see if so-and-so is certified with you guys, because I'm going to report her. Did she get her certification with you? And we as a school cannot say a thing. We even have, when people call for us for references, we just want to verify certification. We can't help you unless we get express written permission from that person, and we cannot reach out and contact that person. That's up to whoever's calling. You need to have them contact us if they in fact need, etc. and on from there. But we cannot confirm or deny anything. And it's same as a coach, right? Apart from when ICF calls and asks, were they coaching with you during this time, right? I mean, that's a yes or no, and that is the one time we would answer that, right?
Perfect. I like that segue. What about ICF? What can be shared? What should be shared with ICF? What isn't necessarily?
I don't think I'm going to share with ICF either. Not unless I've gotten permission to share. So even if they call and say, "Did you work with so and so?" I'm not going to say.
But if we're verifying coaching hours,
yeah, that's exactly why I bring this up.
Well, that's where
there might be some confusion around that.
Yeah. Coaching hours are different in that we have had our clients aware that they've signed a contract stating we're providing ICF, International Coach Federation, acknowledgement of the hours that we work, not of any coaching session or any information that's shared. Do you agree and approve of our sharing that detail? Just it's the start, when we started, when we stopped, how many hours we've worked with you, and if it was a paid coaching gig.
And that's a release of information that happens. Like that is in the contract. An important imperative. But they won't call and ask more than yes or no questions. Just like legally, if your boss is calling to verify your what is it called? Your references, they're not allowed to ask anything but yes or no questions, period. And they can't ask about your performance. They can only ask if you worked there and things of that nature.
Actually, I got something. Somebody was confirming employment, and they did ask those questions.
Not technically legal, at least in California.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Hang on a second while you guys continue. I'll read it.
I was going to add it as well, as we don't say if somebody took our classes or not. There is a way you can verify if somebody's ICF accredited. That is allowed. They have a database that you can search up somebody to see if they're accredited, as in got their ACC or PCC or MCC with the ICF. And I think it'll tell you the date, but that's about it.
Credly.
Well, Credly, you are allowed to share your information as well. You can do with your badge and certificate however you want.
A different way, though, that if you wanted to verify as well.
Yeah, well, I'll have to check on Credly.
What, to see if you can
What is Credly? I feel like we haven't discussed that live yet.
Credly? What is Credly?
Yeah,
Credly is digital badging.
What is
Also,
digital badging?
So you also opt in for digital badges. So when you graduate from Certified Life Coach Institute, you now can get your paper certificate or digital badge. And every single student is sent a form whether or not they would like to opt in for digital badging. And if you would so like to decline, you may. If you don't, you get a digital badge that's hosted on the Credly platform. So we're not just making badges for people willy-nilly. You have to sign up and opt into it.
Well, and there's no harm nor foul to sign up for it and not use the badge, but have access to it for when you're ready to use it. I interrupted you, Brooke. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say the badge, the badge themselves provide a value for the students in the sense that it links to us, it links to ICF, and it is a way to verify that you're trained, for people to look and see that you're actually trained, especially with the way Credly works, because the badges are uniquely coded. So they have a metadata that means that they can't be copied, which is a very cool thing. We're also getting new paper certificates. Anyways.
Okay, so here's those questions. I found it.
Claire has a question too, just so you know.
what the employer asked here is what would you consider the subject's greatest strengths or personal characteristics? And they have space for, please comment on the subject's ability to work with others. Comment on the subject's written and verbal communication skills. What do you feel the subject needs improvement on or further development in? What capacities would you avoid placing the subject?
Well, this subject must have agreed to this information being shared prior
Yeah.
to.
What thought would you relay to the subject's new manager? Would you recommend the subject to another company? Why or why not? So
Yeah, so that's what's. I mean, he must have agreed to that. That must be a process that was agreed to prior to.
I'm looking to see on this letter if it shows me. It does not say that they, or nor is there an attachment showing me that that was an approved request.
So let's also get one thing clear. If you're ever confused, check with your state laws.
That's simple.
For example, in California, life coaches are not considered mandated reporters.
Mm-hmm.
At least the last I checked, which was very recently. That could be completely different in a different state or country, what you're in. Check the local laws, and if you get in trouble, get a lawyer.
I haven't really heard too many people having any issues with this, though. I mean, I think everybody wants to hold that confidentiality. I think everyone is not, and everyone's like a blanket. And I know there's no such thing as a blanket, but in general, I think that the rule of thumb in coaching is to keep that confidential space.
It's integrity. It's be a good human being. Like no. Now another weird gray space though is the space of testimonials and requesting them, and even one of the great things you can do as a new coach is to coach for testimonials early on. So because that really having a slew of amazing testimonials is money in the bank later, essentially, right? Making that trade, but that would be again something you would agree upon prior to with your client.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I have been coaching all day and it was a heck of a day, and I go home to my significant.
You mean like today? No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I go home to my significant other, and I want to download. I want to just, do we download? Even though they'll never ever.
You shouldn't.
Look behind me. See what that says?
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm playing. Now, what if I have a therapist? Can I talk to my therapist that we're in our own space of confidentiality?
That's a good question.
Or can I talk to my coach?
So you still cannot give any specifics. You cannot talk about that person. You can and have the ability to talk about how you're affected without any specifics to that other person.
So let's
if that sort of logic worked, like I could tell somebody as long as they keep the information confidential.
Marriage, husband and wife, there is that what is that called? The protection between the secrecy between, what is that called?
Well, we're not talking about legally. We're talking about ethically. As far as the ICF is concerned about confidentiality, if you tell somebody and then say, okay, but keep it a secret, and they're like, yeah, and then they tell someone to keep it, that's not being confidential. If everybody is confidential with each other, then no one is. That's probably not true, but
very deep.
I do not think that counts as far as the ICF ethics goes. Which, by the way, Lisa, what happens if I were to just be an accredited coach and flagrantly just break ethical conduct?
I go on to, the insert big TV show here, and I talk about my client, Bob.
Yes, you can go file. ICF has a, I don't remember what it's called, a claim. I'm going to call it a claim. You can go file a claim with ICF, and then they will investigate it, put a team together, and investigate with both parties what occurred and go on from there.
They will give you the death penalty if you break.
Well, if you lose your credential.
It's also interesting. to note there's a difference between confidentiality, privacy, and secrecy. Like they have nuanced differences, but they actually are different in the eyes of other well, just in general.
In the eyes of ICF or in the eyes of the general public?
ICF just talks about confidentiality, right? But there is a privacy thing. With a website, we're dealing with privacy, right? We're dealing with when you're accepting money, we're dealing with privacy. We're not dealing with confidentiality at that point. We're dealing with privacy. So it's just subtle nuanced differences, but they do in fact exist. I don't know how secrecy works into it, though. And anonymity is another thing too. But so that was my question. When we say we don't give away the details, the defining details, what are defining details?
I would say location, name, when and where this coaching session took place, any other sort of details that could be used to identify a person readily. So, for example, if I was like, I coached my client yesterday at 4 p.m., the client I coach in my office at this location, and we talked about his brother, Bob Johnson, and his sister, Mary Johnson. You're not saying who it is, but you're pretty much giving enough information away.
If I'm a coach and I have 2 clients, right? Yeah. And I'm sharing any details, I know it's one of those 2, right? Like if so that's even like the number of clients that you have could come into play as an identifiable characteristic in the case of confidentiality. So lie and say you have a ton of clients always.
So part of what I did to help with that privacy piece is to space the clients apart, because I didn't have a front entrance and a back entrance and all that good stuff. I had one entrance. So I did my best to keep that privacy in honor of the client.
A conga line of clients waiting to come in through the door. You want one that has exited the building before the next enters, unless you have a space for them to do that transfer. Yeah.
Yeah, like back-to-back clients in the same waiting room. And
so one of my therapists, doctors will do this as well. Some certain doctors if you want confidentiality, where you have the waiting room where you come in as one person, then they put you in a room. You're not allowed to leave the room until basically the waiting room is clear, and then you're walked out, and then that's that way that people aren't ever crossing paths. Mm-hmm. And that's just in the interest of, there are some doctors that their clientele really wants that secrecy and privacy, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's similar space. I think it's a matter of respect. It's a respectful thing to do for people. I mean, more so maybe in therapy or the psychiatry space, but in life coaching as well.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I did my best. Now and again, clients would cross paths because you have the really early show-uppers, and like, no, don't do that. You don't need to show up that early. You do your best, and that's what you do. The intention is to avoid that interaction and create that privacy and confidentiality for their experience. So,
and it's also it's not like a giant faux pas or a hard and fast. You never break it. We've given examples when you do or when it's built in. I would just say that discussion, if you're going to be breaking it for the case of testimonials for ICF, the discussion needs to happen prior to sharing anything, and an written agreement should be made.
And if the client wants more confidentiality that is agreed to, reasonably accommodate them.
Confidentiality. I want to wear a scarf, and I don't want you to even know who I
am. A fedora with like the sunglasses.
So I have a conundrum. Let's talk about a conundrum. In this conundrum, there's 2 people we're coaching at a corporation who are striving to get the same position. And we're coaching them both. What do we do there?
What do you mean?
We're coaching them to get that position, and there are 2 of them going for that position.
It's up to
the same thing.
In their hands. It's up to them. I coach them. It happens in the coaching. What happens outside of my office is none of my business. Right?
Does it behoove us, the coach, to say I'm coaching Or does that break confidentiality?
Well-
But we're in a corporate environment. There's lots of conundrums
Well,
there.
I don't think we. Well, the corporate environment, it brings a lot of things into, because like what in a corporate environment we are using assessments, right? We are, and those assessments and those details in those assessments are meant to be shared, and they're meant to be shared in the interest of creating a structure and moving employees to areas where they can better excel, things of that nature.
And create ROI as well. Those assessments help return.
Well, all of it ultimately creates ROI, because if you have a better operating machine, if all the wheels are at their best, then Anthony, the thing that's going to happen is, of course, you're going to function better and more effectively and efficiently as a company, and you're going to increase your ROI. But that's an interesting space, though, because if I am a coach, I am I'm coaching an entire team. I'm assessing an entire team. I have to go back to the boss and give recommendations based on these assessments and based on things of that nature as to where to. And so that expectation of privacy kind of goes out the door, right?
Well, in that case, you're not a coach in the typical.
Yeah, I was just going to go there.
Team coach.
You're in a consultant's hat.
You're a consultant,
Yeah.
and it's a team coaching space, and it's a whole different set of core competencies for those ones. Yes.
Well, it's not even like you're a coach per se. It's you're an employee who uses coaching, the skill of coaching, to get some result for the other employees and your boss.
This is a very common space, though, that where a coach is brought into a company. Let's say a company is just merged. Let's say they've lost their leader, right? So now this company is in a space of turmoil, and there is because of that, this great transition. A lot of times this is where a corporate coach, an executive coach, will be brought in, and it's not that they're coaching the executive, it's that they're coaching the entire corporation, essentially, to get them back to a space of sort of homeostasis and efficiency and effectiveness. Mm-hmm. And that is why you use assessments. That is why these things exist in the coaching space, and that is to better know in those spaces where your employees and where your people are going to function at their best. And that's also where the coaching comes in, because we ask those questions. We ask in that coaching space, and they open up. And we also teach leaders the tools that a coach uses, because it's so much better to be a manager with those tools as well.
Well, and conversely, it could be about the team, if we call it all those people the team, assessing the C-suite as well. It works uphill.
It goes both ways. Oh boy, does it go both ways. Yes, it does. And that's the thing is. And actually, most of the time in those spaces, it is not the team that is the big issue. Most of the time, it's the C-suite that is a big issue, who is micromanaging, not communicating, who is doing things like that. And so it's about coaching them to a space where they can trust their employees, and they can manage without having to be in that corporate, or that fingers in everything kind of space. And so a lot of times the C-suites need the coaching more than the employees. Absolutely. The other thing with that too, in that corporate sort of space, is if there is a big goal, a big directive, a big, something that they as a company want to reach, sometimes they will bring a coach in at that time as well, in order to sort of get everybody functioning at their peaks and their highest levels, to reach said goal. And that's where value coaching and all these things come in, and you can charge an arm and a leg, because if they're going to reach the multi-million-dollar goal, you're going to get a piece of that, darn it. But that's sort of where that, which is interesting in the negotiation space with those, is a lot of times the coach will go, well, what is this going to mean for you? How much will this make you as a company? And then the value-based coach pricing would go, okay, I would like X amount of that, and that's it's a cool space, but definitely a lot of power going, like,
so maybe a good way to think about it, about confidentiality in the space, is not confidentiality with specific individuals. Your confidentiality with the client. The client is the whole corporate body. It's that whole sphere that you're keeping confidential.
The client at that point is whoever's paying your paycheck. Honestly, it's whoever has hired you in, and they have expressed this is why you are hired. that is who you are making the agreement with and signing the papers with. And so all of the legality lies between you and them. And within that contract, I would have it detail out the expectation of confidentiality with regard to their employees as well. It would just be a separate addendum to the contract, I would say. Yeah. Sorry, just got all excited about corporate coaching. I'm tired. I'm going to mute myself again.
Eventually, I want to see a corporate coach in action doing their thing.
Yeah.
I haven't had that opportunity yet.
This is definitely a space I'm not 100% familiar with. I am interested just listening to Brooke talk about it. It's really cool stuff.
I mean, I wish I had had these tools when I was managing a team of, 1,500 people. Because, I mean, I think there was some innate empathy was always something I was quite good at. Asking questions was something I was good at, and not jumping to conclusions was something I was good at least for my employees. I jumped to the conclusions when it came to guests complaining about my employees. At that point, I was like, you're wrong. They're fine. Go away. I just always had their back. But there are so many tools that could have come in so very handy in the coaching space for me there that would have been wonderful to have. As a manager of that many human beings and trying to get them all to get along, show up to work, and sign their paperwork, not fight with each other.
Now Brooke's just airing her grievances.
Not get naked in front of other people at work, like common sense.
Brooke, could you probably let the viewers know what exactly you did that would require all this, or at least what space you were working in?
I ran the creative for 15 amusement parks, but more and biggest and most when I had that many people working for me was we would swell up for 3 months when we would do Halloween Haunt or Not Scary Farm, which is a giant Halloween event, one of the biggest in the world, and we would hire in alone. We would hire 1,000 monsters, not probably 1,200 because we would figure a lot of them would fall off. And then we would also, which monsters, you can imagine what kind of people those are and having to manage them. And then on top of that, we're having to hire techs. We're having to hire carpenters, builders, craftsmen, everything you can imagine just to get the event up and keep it running. And then also the shows, there's a lot of wheels and things happening in that all has to happen at the same time.
Which reminds of working in maybe the entertainment industry, because you encounter this a lot, but also... I was thinking about this topic I was thinking about, because this pops up a lot in entertainment, but some clients will make you want to sign this is an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement.
I think everybody in my life has signed an NDA. Like, I don't think I know there's not many people in my existence that have not signed an NDA.
Brooke, can you explain? I know, I'm hearing feedback somewhere.
I'm going to
mute myself.
That's better, I think.
No, I think it's me. I think I might be playing twice. I don't know. Although that's better now.
Yeah, it's better now.
But what was your question, Anthony?
I was going to say, for those who don't know, or who've never signed one, what is a non-disclosure agreement?
Well, and non-disclosure agreements are a little bit of taboo space. I mean, everybody knows, but didn't we just have a presidency that, like, the whole thing around NDAs?
Yeah. Where you can get people to sign them, that doesn't mean they're enforceable.
Enforceable is another thing. Now, the fact that they exist, though, do keep people kind of from sharing and from things of that nature. But there are areas where these kind of things are very important, like in copyright law, in trademark law. These are all different sort of versions of the NDA. So you would, in the entertainment industry, you would sign an NDA because if I have a film and I have a story that's never been told before, right? So I've got a script. It's a one-of-a-kind script. I don't want somebody to steal my script. I don't want that to happen. I don't want someone to steal the story, any of it. So the moment before you see anything in film, before you can even read a script, you're often signing an NDA. If anybody who's worth their salt as a producer or is making sure you sign an NDA immediately. In that case, more enforceable than in the case of, like, you can't share anything about me and my personal life and the laws I'm breaking and all of these things like that. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. But in this case where you're protecting, IP, intellectual property, those kind of things are far more enforceable and come in handy. As business owners, honestly, having an NDA, if you have a product, even if it's a service, a program that you're putting together, a curriculum, it is beneficial to protect it in some regard under the umbrella of copywriting, trademarking, NDAs, how you run your business. If you have a secret way that your business is run that is not proprietary information you don't want anybody else to know about, people should be signing NDAs and confidentiality agreements without a doubt to protect the integrity of your business and how it functions.
So as a coach, going back to this confidentiality piece, are you, like your clients, do they have confidentiality with you, the coach? Meaning, can they talk about you, or can they say whatever they want about you?
I mean, absolutely, they can. I don't, unless there's something built into the agreement that requires there is an expectation of a return of confidentiality. They can do whatever they want, right? So if they don't think you're a good coach, they're going to put that on Yelp. They're going to put that on Google. Like, you are not protected. It's annoying. Well, and that's the worst part, getting reviewed, like in that space. Great point, Lisa. We have had like 1 or 2 reviews of people who didn't even take our courses, and it's like, how is that fair? Like, you can't leave that's not even, you didn't even experience the product. How is it? That's not fair. And so that space can be very annoying and often sometimes detrimental, and sometimes very sort of hurtful to especially burgeoning coaches, entrepreneurs, and people starting businesses, and it can cause a lot of panic and turmoil. So before you're a jerk and you leave mean reviews, take a moment, cool down, and think about it.
There are just some people who want to see the world burn. They're just unavoidable. Unfortunately, there are people out there.
People also deserve a 1-star review. But 2 stars.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
1 star should only happen in like extreme cases. But it's 2 or 3 or 4. Okay, I can live in that. So that's reasonable. But if the 1 star should be like, you kicked my puppy and you
punched me in the face.
Yes, that's when the 1-star reviews can happen. Not for like, I had to wait for 2 minutes longer than I expected. Not okay.
I wish we could leave reviews for our clients and our students.
Oh,
I wish I could just be like, you're a 1-star client. I'm just going to make a Yelp for you and just...
We don't have students with 1 stars. We have amazing students.
No, but what if you had? There is some value there. If you had a client that you said, I can't coach you, I'm referring you out, you have mental problems, like, or something like that. It almost would be nice if there was a way to put like a red flag over their head for other coaches.
I mean, like, businesses blacklist people all the time. So like, if I am kicked out of a Denny's and they take my photo and put it on their wall, they tell all the other restaurants.
Do they have like a wall of shame? I've never seen a wall of shame at Denny's. Yeah. I'm going to look for one.
And I'm speaking from personal experience. Out of all the restaurants I've been kicked out of, they will blacklist you. So maybe.
I know exactly which Denny's you
do. I don't think I want to know.
Lisa, that's confidential information between myself and my lawyer.
And Denny's.
And Denny's. No, but I'm saying, I mean, it's not extreme for businesses to blacklist people for extreme circumstances.
You worked at a casino, and you said that they have lifetime bans. Like, they have longer than lifetime bans. And we had 99-year bans. Like, nobody's lived past 99 years. And we had it was like we called it C-filed. You got C-filed. What does that mean? You have to see their file before you can before they're let.
I can say that whatever business I may or may not have worked for, the other businesses in extreme scenarios would let us know, like our competitors would let us know that this person has, something going on that we should not allow them into the casino.
They do that in Vegas, like with card counters too. Like a card counter can get a reputation and maybe only get caught in one casino, but they'll talk to each other and be like this, which is not fair. If I can count cards, I should be able to play. I'm sorry.
Everybody's finding out so much great information about us. I got banned from all the restaurants. Brooke counts cards. Lisa, what are your vices?
I'm perfect in every way.
So would it be reasonable, let's just say, if we had a real problem hypothetical student and we wanted to let the other
No,
coaching companies know, don't train this person?
never in
No.
a million years. Never. No, it's not our business. Once they're not in our, it's none of our business what they do with their lives and where they go. It's not. And that would be, and honestly, there comes a point when when it's like it's codependency almost, or micromanaging or whatever it is, where you're letting something affect you that much that you feel the need to like pick up the phone and call. And I mean, let go and move on. Like unless they like murdered your family member, in which case call the police, not other institutions. So
I don't know that we would want to waste the time.
It's not a life or death kind of instance, so there's no reason.
I don't have that kind of energy. I mean, like I got to call every school out there. Like that would just, my life would be very exhausted. It's already, and that would just.
I mean, not that we don't think.
Yeah, I was gonna say
we don't have that problem, but if we
that's assuming that we've got problems like this.
The bad coach database.
I think was there a website like a few years ago that was like bad boyfriend database?
No way.
I'm pretty sure there was, where girls would like.
Well, they have. Yeah. Well,
bad dates or bad boyfriends, and they would rate them so other girls could watch out for them.
I am all for that. Quite honest, having done the online dating thing, I wish like there was a way to like get video testimonials of other women who had been on dates with these people.
Is there like a rating system in that realm? I'm not.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool if it was like,
I don't think that's helpful.
I don't think it's necessarily a good thing either, right? Because we all have exes. We all have had are not the best moments, and those
and we're all very biased in those situations.
We would like to be able to have a clean slate and start over, and maybe meet someone that likes us.
Bridge the gap. We were talking about.
I'm a 5-star man.
Confidentiality, and now
we're almost done anyways. But dating confidentiality. The bottom line is have integrity, and use your common sense, your brain, and protect confidentiality so long as it can be and should be. And talk to your client. Be upfront. I mean, that's what client agreements, they exist. Use them. Don't coach without a contract.
Just set boundaries, set coaching agreements. Do NDAs if you got to do them.
Don't do business without a contract, period. Like, you should not, don't do it. Just don't do it.
What does Valerie Lawrence say? I had a client that stopped coming to me, but before she stopped coming to me, she said, all we have each other's phone numbers so we can keep in touch. In my mind, I'm like, yes, if you're a paying client.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's kind of like that cold hard truth. Like, I'm sorry you're not paying me. It's been fun getting to know you, but we can no longer. We don't. Yeah, this is what happens.
You are in control of your interactions. If you don't want to interact with someone, you don't have to.
Well, and it's also, for that example, is somehow the client forgot what that boundary was and what she was doing with you.
Yeah.
Because of the interaction being friendly, which it should be.
Yeah.
You're not going to be rude to your client. So
Absolutely.
I will say this: answering phones for CLCI, there is that this is the boundary, it's a separate thing, and I won't make it long, but there have been times where I have had to block, like, because they just don't. It's like no, I'm not your best friend. I can't solve your problems. Not your life coach. This is a business. I mean, but I also would not coach. I mean, like, I have so many rules within the structure of what I do, just not to cross boundaries and be unprofessional and enmeshment. Oh God. It's
not your personal phone number. It's the business phone number. So
it's the business phone number, but there have been times I've called out with my personal number and I regretted it.
I've done that a few times myself. I haven't regretted it yet, but fingers crossed that I will regret it soon.
So we're out of time though. So Jerome, everybody, sign us off. I'm going to take a nap now.
Thank you for attending our mishmash of boundaries, confidentiality, NDAs, talking about return on investment. We kind of went all over the place on this show.
Yeah, we did.
It was fun. It's always fun. Love you guys. Thank you for joining us.
I want to say one thing in short. Confidentiality is just important for the effectiveness of a coaching session, because that's so important in a coaching session, is creating that safe space, which includes confidentiality. So to really just sum it all up, confidentiality is important. Make sure it is established before a session. Make sure you guys understand each other as far as what confidentiality means to each other as far as coach-client is concerned, because again, that's a very important factor in creating a safe coaching space and a good coaching session. And with that,
Also,
go ahead, Britt.
anybody out there watching, if you have ideas, questions, concerns, anything you might want us to cover, topics, if you're a coach and you have something that you just don't know the answer to, or you want clarification on, or if you want to be a coach and you want more clarification, Anthony, as well, just leave a comment. Leave it. We will read them. We will review them. We will answer them. And we may even choose it as a topic and use it here. So we want to help you. We live to serve. And please, and I'm taking a nap again. Bye, guys.
Certified
See you guys.
Coach Institute.
All right.